evening and welcome. My name is Rita Golstead. I am the Vice President and Dean of the University. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this year's Gaddis Lecture. Regretfully, Representative Linda Black will not be here herself tonight to present her lecture. She was called away due to a family emergency. Fortunately, however, Professor John Flanders has graciously agreed to present Representative Black's lecture. I would now like to turn the program over to Devin Plum.
Welcome to the 29th Annual Gaddis Lecture. I would like to thank Professor John Flanders for graciously agreeing to present Linda Black's speech tonight. Her speech, you'll be reading. Representative Black is an alum of Central Methodist. She received her bachelor's degree in elementary education, and before attending CMU, Representative Black pursued her associate's degree from Mineral Area College, and after her bachelor's, she went on to receive her master's in education from Southwest Baptist University. In the Missouri House, Representative Black chairs its Corrections Committee and serves on its Agribusiness, Emerging Issues in Animal Agriculture, and Tourism and Natural Resources Committees. She is also a member of the State Legislature's Joint Committee on Corrections. In addition to her legislative duties, Representative Black is a former public school teacher, former city treasurer of Bonne Terre, and the former chief deputy treasurer of St. Francois County. Representative Black is also a member of the National Rifle Association, Missouri Farm Bureau, and the St. Francois Democrat Club. She is also on the board of directors for the University of Missouri Extension Council. Born in Bonne Terre in 1970, Representative Black currently resides in Bonne Terre with her husband and 2 children. The lecture Representative Black prepared for tonight is entitled, The Missouri House, Ordinary People Making Extraordinary Decisions. At this time, I would invite you all to give a warm welcome to Professor John Flanders.
I can see many of you heard that I was going to be reading this speech instead of Little Black, so thank you for coming out in droves to hear me read this speech. I could read almost anything, but it will be a little bit of a challenge for me because, of course, I'm the resident libertarian, and I'm reading a speech that was prepared by a socially conservative Democrat. After the speech, I will be happy to answer questions about almost anything except life in the Missouri legislature. We'll see what happens at that point. The Missouri legislature, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to present to you a behind-the-scenes look at the Missouri legislature. First, I want to thank Central Methodist University for allowing me to spend this evening with you. Central Methodist satellite program in Park Hills helped me continue my education and begin a career in education that has helped me be the person I am today. I strongly believe that in life, all roads lead you to where you are meant to be. Through prayer and God's grace, He led me here to you tonight. For the next few moments, I hope you open your minds to a new perspective. I'll be briefer than months. On the men and women who make Missouri's laws, who set the $23 billion state budget, and who work on your behalf to make sure government is still mindful of the needs of the citizens it was established to serve. Some will say the authority of the legislature is granted in the Missouri Constitution, but my belief is that it predates our 200-year-old Constitution by several thousand years. As Romans 13:1 instructs us, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Government was God's way of bringing order to His creation, of reminding us of the need for mankind to adhere to the consciousness that we often need to know our boundaries. In Jefferson City, there are many legislators, 163 representatives and 34 senators who have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution and to serve the citizens in an ethical and moral manner. Believe it or not everyone who enters public office is there to do the right thing. Our job is to serve the people. Unfortunately, there are those who never get that. There are those who use public office to prosper or move their own agendas. But I'm here to tell you about the rest of us. Those who serve with a sincere desire to help people, to tackle tough decisions regarding healthcare, education, public safety, transportation needs, natural resource management, the stability of the state economy, jobs, and all the countless other issues we address in the legislative process. Tough decisions face us every day we are in session, and the legislative session in Missouri runs from January through May, which means extended time away from family, working late nights or even until the early morning hours until we have debated a bill in its entirety. And when we are not in session, we are back home in our districts, listening to the concerns of our fellow citizens. I have tackled clogged storm water drainage issues, helped senior citizens choose which Medicare plan best suits their finances, spoken to school children about how a bill becomes a law. I even pulled a stalled out truck from floodwater once on my Ford 5000 tractor. We are like firemen. When things get tough and the flames start rising high, we rush in. There is no manual, no job training, no college course to prepare us. The lessons of life are what we need to guide us in the decision-making process. That's why knowing our constituency is so important. We have to rely on knowing our constituency, having a firm grasp on our moral convictions, and spending a great deal of time talking and listening to those to the people who sent us to speak for them in the lawmaking process. I'd like to share an example of one ordinary person who did extraordinary things on behalf of the citizens of Missouri. Several years ago, a young reporter with the NBC affiliate in mid-Missouri traveled to a small town near the Lake of the Ozarks to do a story. Max Creek was a notorious speed trap that was facing the reality of a new law, a law passed by the state legislature that effectively ended the town's ability to generate large amounts of revenue from speeding tickets. As part of the story, the reporter had to travel to Versailles, Missouri, to interview the state representative for that district. Upon arriving at the address he was given, the reporter was perplexed by the fact that he was standing outside a small engine repair shop. When he went in to speak to the representative, a man emerged from the back wearing overalls and covered in grease. The reporter was shocked to realize the man in front of him was in fact the state representative he planned to interview. The image he had in mind of how an elected official should look was shattered as he realized the man who helped fix the law that shut down speed traps, like Max Creek, also spent his time fixing lawnmower engines. I share this story because it highlights the fact that we often have a preconceived notion of how an elected official should look and act. When you take a closer look at your state legislature and the men and women who serve there, you will find a compassionate group of people, teachers, insurance agents, preachers, farmers, policemen. You see a body comprised of ordinary people from all walks of life. We even have a man who owns a pesticide company. If a public safety bill comes to the floor, we have several members of law enforcement and even a retired FBI special agent to bring a professional knowledge of the impact the legislation will have on the average citizens. The expertise of these individuals has led us to reform Missouri's DWI laws. During my time in office, I have had the pleasure of working with these colleagues to crack down on DWI offenders who have gotten behind the wheel while over the legal limit and have taken the lives of innocent people. I've had the honor to get to know several mothers who lost their sons to drunk drivers, each with her own grief driving her determination to become involved in the legislative process, hoping to spare another mother the grief of how they now face for the rest of their lives. So in 2010, we passed a comprehensive bill that increased the use of interlocking devices, devised a tracking system to catch offenders who have had prior DWIs, and several years before enacted legislation to create drug court in order to rehabilitate those with addictions in lieu of jail time. When we discuss the possible restriction of pharmaceuticals, we have doctors, nurses, and pharmacists to bring us insight as to how this will impact the health of people. I am proud to have supported my colleagues just this past session when we passed a piece of legislation giving pharmacists the right to not carry abortion-producing drugs, the morning after pill, if such drugs go against their moral and religious convictions. A few years ago, I had the privilege of working with an older representative who was a farmer. He was so old, I think he first came to Jefferson City in a covered wagon. He was an avid trail rider. He loved horses. We worked together to pass legislation that would ensure Missouri's state parks continue offering equestrian trails to those who enjoy experiencing the great outdoors on horseback. He worked 8 years to make that happen. For those of you who like drinking beer in the comfort of your own homes while keeping in mind the DWI reforms we worked so hard on, we even have you covered. There are certain unnamed legislators who have worked to make sure you can now buy your beer earlier in the morning and on Sunday too. I didn't work on that particular piece of legislation, to be quite honest. We have debated whether or not to allow the execution of murderers in Missouri to continue. On this issue, one of my colleagues passionately discussed the murder of his wife and a deputy who tried to defend her life in a heinous crime that occurred not far from here. The sheriff who lost his wife and the deputy later ran for the House and won. He stood up for the need for capital punishment, while a preacher colleague of mine who counsels prisoners opposed the death penalty due to his religious convictions. Both were convinced by the same God to debate this issue from opposing views. The bill would allow a moratorium on executions in order to complete a study relating to science and technology. The purpose was to ensure we never wrongfully put to death someone who may be innocent. Missouri is tough on crime and tougher on those who have taken another life. The bill failed, but the debate was heartfelt on both sides and made us all aware of the gravity of our decisions. On a lighter note, our budget chairman, who oversees a $23 billion state budget, looks like he's about 19 and drives what looks like a retired taxi cab back and forth to the Capitol. The car has bolt holes through it where the fare rates were posted on the doors. The fact that it's the color of a blueberry tells me he got a good deal. Most CEOs in charge of such a budget arrive in a limo, or at least a nice Jaguar. But our budget chairman has proven to rise to the task and has helped Missouri become one of the most stable state economies in the nation. One ordinary man in the legislature was a displaced auto worker from Chrysler. He had lost his job due to the plants in St. Louis closing down. He was instrumental in the negotiations that helped over 6,000 workers keep their jobs at the Clay Como Ford plant in 2009 when we passed an economic development package which helped Ford make the decision to invest in Missouri rather than pull out and leave thousands without work. And then there's me, an ordinary school teacher, mother of two, a preacher's daughter, who was determined to make a difference. I ran for representative because I was at a crossroad in my life. I had been offered a job working for the UME Extension Program in Youth Services. I could keep teaching school, which I enjoyed, or the House seat was open, and I knew I had the work ethic from farming that would allow me to outwork my opponents. The work ethic paid off, and I won my election. But more than that, I believe God gave me the direction. I just had to be willing to work for it. I am a pro-life, conservative Democrat. If you don't know what that is, you can Google the endangered species list and find more information. Now, 4 years later, this ordinary person has had several pieces of legislation passed. One gives death benefits to the families of fallen officers killed in the line of duty. Another allows veterans who have paid the ultimate sacrifice to be memorialized in their home communities by posting memorial signage at interchanges across Missouri. I have written a bill entitled Sam Pratt's Law that keeps unlicensed daycare providers from keeping children when they have been charged with crimes of child abuse, neglect, or even the death of a child. Somehow, I was appointed to chair a committee as a Democrat in the minority, and only 43 committees and 106 Republicans to choose from. I still haven't figured out why they chose me. I do not spend any time building my campaign coffers. I spend my time working for the 43,000 people who I swore to serve. I figure some buy their vote, but I'd rather earn it through the work I do. This year I'm running unopposed. The work has paid off. So, in the chambers where such ordinary people have come before me, such as Governor Warren Hearns, Senator Claire McCaskill, Governor Matt Blunt, Congressman Todd Akin, First Lady Betty Hearns, they have risen to places of continued influence and have gone on to continued public service in higher office. You know, when I think about these men and women, I think not about their titles, but about who they are as people. We have Bible studies at the Capitol several times a week. We open every session with a prayer. Many of us pray every day for God's guidance and that He will provide the wisdom in our time of decision-making. For me, it's not my infinite wisdom that allows me to understand the vast array of issues that I must have an in-depth knowledge of to make the decisions I do. I believe it's the power of God who, when asked, gives us the knowledge to work for the good of His people. In Missouri, we have a legislature which puts God first. We enjoy a beautiful Capitol building where God's name is etched in the marble walls, reminding us that God is still the final authority in all things. So if you think about the upcoming elections and you hear the media rhetoric or hear people saying we should vote them all out of office and start over, remember, there are men and women who start their day praying for God's guidance, who when faced with a tough decision seek a higher power to guide them in wisdom and knowledge. They see the faces of the people who said, "You have my vote," and they cast a difficult vote hoping people will know they did what they believed in their heart was the right thing to do. But what has divided us is the right thing. It doesn't look the same to all of us. Right when you represent a depressed neighborhood in downtown St. Louis. Right when you represent rural Missouri farming communities where everyone knows each other by their first name. Right when you represent an affluent community whose per-student expenditure is 3 times that of other communities. So what is so extraordinary about these people? The legislators who I've talked to you about tonight. What is extraordinary about them is that they are just like you. They want what is good for their communities. They want to make the place they call home just a little better for future generations. They want to know that our best days are ahead of us if we all work together. That can happen. If we learn that it's not our difference that makes us unique as a nation, it is how we are similar. We all share a desire to see a more united nation. We all have pride in the red, white, and blue. And if you're like me, the national anthem, when sung right, can still bring a tear to your eye. So if we want this state and nation to move ahead, I'm going to ask you to do 2 things. Don't let the media form your perceptions of the men and women who serve you in government. It's often skewed and slanted in one way or another. Educate yourselves about who you want to serve you in public office. 2, pray for our elected leaders and for our state and nation that God will give our decision makers the right tools to make the right decisions. Because remember, we all make our decisions based on where we came from. But through prayer, we can go where God has predestined our state and nation to be. Have safe travel back home, and God bless each and every one of you.